To really understand networking, we need to understand all of the components involved.